Here today in Portugal, the 1990 World Championship could be decided, with 3 races still to go. For if Ayrton Senna wins for the 3rd time, it's going to be almost impossible for his rival Alain Prost to beat him in the championship. But Alain Prost has won 3 of the 6 Estoril Grand Prix that have been held here in Portugal, and he knows from second on the grid he could make it 4. And talking of Ferrari, the soap opera drama of who takes Nigel Mansell's place in 1991 has been resolved. It was going to be Benetton's Sandro Nannini, but with the shock announcement still rocking the Formula One world, it was cancelled in favour of a delighted Jean Alesi.
I'm very, very happy because it was very difficult at the beginning, and Ferrari found the solution, and I'm very happy.
What is the arrangement at Ferrari with you and Alain Prost? Are you equal, or is it number 1 and number 2?
No, we are equal, but he's 3 times world champion. He won 43 races, and I have just 1.5 year in Formula One. So for sure I have to learn a lot with him.
15 days before Monza, I talked with Flavio Briatore, and I said, maybe I like to go in Ferrari for 2 years and then I come back in Benetton, because I like to stay in Benetton, it's not a problem. But 2 years in Ferrari, I like. And then in the last week they proposed me a contract with 1 year and more 1 year with an option. And this I don't like, because I talk every time about 2 years, and I said no.
2 weeks ago, Monza was dominated by the horrific crash that Derek Warwick had in his Lotus in the opening lap.
Fortunately, the impact, although it was very hard, I survived. The wheel went over my head. I see everything happening. Everything was, I was completely conscious for the whole of the event. But all the time it was happening, I was thinking of, it's amazing the amount of things that go through your mind. I mean, although the accident only took 4 or 5 seconds, I reckon I was actually in the car having that accident for at least 2 hours.
There was certainly a lot going on in Derek's cockpit at Monza, but then it's the driver's office. Jonathan Palmer.
At first sight, you wouldn't even think there's room to fit in a Grand Prix car cockpit, let alone race from it, for the designers are constantly striving to reduce its size in the quest for performance. Situated in the centre of this immensely strong carbon fibre survival cell chassis, the seat is individually moulded to each driver's body shape. Despite appearances, it's actually very comfortable, providing tremendous support, particularly when this 6-point seatbelt is tightened to pin the body back into it. Having made his seat, the driver then decides exactly where he wants the steering wheel, and the column is made to suit. The gear lever and other controls for the anti-roll bar and brake balance, together with switches including ignition, fuel pump, rear light and fire extinguisher, take up what little space is left. Visibility is an important consideration. The driver actually looks over this screen rather than through it, and its height is varied for different circuits, high on fast ones to reduce cockpit wind turbulence and low at slow tracks to improve visibility. Mirrors too need to be carefully positioned to find a clear path through the complex rear wings. Moving forward, the cars have 3 pedals, accelerator, brake and clutch, just like a family car, but arranged much closer together, again because of lack of space. To accommodate drivers of different leg length, the pedals can be adjusted fore and aft, though safety regulations state they must not be ahead of the front axle line. Quite a problem for tall drivers like Gerhard Berger. It really is a small man's world.
After 12 rounds of the 16-round World Championship, Ayrton Senna leads by 16 points ahead of Alain Prost. One or other of them must become world champion this year. Gerhard Berger is 3rd, Thierry Boutsen 4th, Nelson Piquet 5th, Tracy 6th, and Nigel Mansell 7th equal.
Estoril, I think, with a few clouds around, but certainly nicer weather than here in Britain at the moment. But it's Nigel Hunt and James Hunt and Murray Walker. And Murray, there's been a lot of speculation during the past week about Nigel Mansell's future. Have you any more on that?
Yes, indeed I have, Bob. Indeed, from a sweltering Estoril circuit where the atmosphere is
further heated by the general belief here that Nigel Mansell will reverse his decision to retire at the end of the season, and that it's going to be announced in Spain that he's to return to the Williams team next year. Now, it's unsubstantiated, but if it's true, and I think it is, just remember who told you first. But for now, Nigel is sitting on his third pole position of 1990. Not only that, but he was comfortably fastest in this morning's warm-up, and he was delighted with his Ferrari, which was nearly a second faster than the McLaren of Ayrton Senna, who is in third position, second row on the grid, who had an engine problem this morning, a misfire from the Honda engine. You're looking, incidentally, at the daunting figure of Jean-Marie Balestre, who is the head man of FISA, the governing body of motorsport, and there is an enormously pro-Senna, pro-Brazilian crowd here. That is Martin Donnelly, who went extremely well in the warm-up this morning. He starts from 15th on the grid, but he was 6th fastest in the Lotus this morning, and Lotus need a fillip, and they've got it with Martin Donnelly being 6th fastest this morning, and Derek Warwick, his teammate, being 11th fastest. And so Mansell and Prost first and second on the grid. Emanuele Pirro, the Roman there in the Dallara. And tactics may decide this race. It's very difficult to pass at Portugal, and if Nigel Mansell can get away well with Prost behind him using the 7-speed semi-automatic gearbox advantage of the Ferrari, it's going to be very difficult for Senna and Berger to do anything about it. Don't forget too that last year it was here that Nigel Mansell, during his pit stop for tyres, reversed against the rules, was shown the black flag, which he failed to see, and subsequently collided with Ayrton Senna, taking them both out of the race, as a result of which Mansell was excluded from the following race, the Spanish Grand Prix. Well, he's in a good position at the moment to get away clearly in front of everybody. Maurizio Gugelmin, who's suffering yesterday from a very, very nasty bout of flu, as was Satoru Nakajima, the Japanese driver in the Tyrrell, who crashed harmlessly, as far as he was concerned, although it wrote the car off in warm-up this morning. And Nakajima is feeling distinctly under the weather and is not going to be taking part in the Portuguese Grand Prix, as a result of which there are only 25 starters instead of the usual 26. And that means to say that Philippe Alliot, Derek Warwick, Nicola Larini, Stefano Modena, who incidentally is going to be driving for the Tyrrell team next year, Stefano Modena, Yannick Dalmas and David Brabham move up a place. David Brabham starting 25th and last, but he's starting for his first Portuguese Grand Prix, and he drove very well in the warm-up this morning, 21st fastest. Big crowd, as you can see. This circuit, which, as I've said, is difficult to pass on, is nevertheless liked very much by the drivers. 71 laps is going to be 192 very hard miles.
Yes, and of course the big discussion here in Estoril this weekend has been the final piece of the main jigsaw amongst the driver and team changes for next year, and that of course is the vacant number 1 seat at the Williams team, or potentially a vacant seat, and the lack of anywhere to go for Nigel Mansell. And it seems, happily for everybody, for Grand Prix racing in general, for British fans and supporters in particular, that Mansell and Williams are keeping things very close to their chests, but it does seem that they've done a deal and all is well, and that Mansell will be able to mount as he's always wanted. In fact, the retirement thing was a sidetrack, really. His challenge for the World Championship